Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, and CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I've got two excellent guests. I have Dr. Zena Crenshaw-Logal and Ms. Belinda Parker Brown. Dr. Zena Crenshaw-Logal is a formal civil trial lawyer turned full-time human rights advocate. Crenshaw-Logal has helped challenge every seriously questionable aspect of America's legal system, working as a co-founder and executive director of National Judicial Conduct and Disability Law Project, Incorporated, which is NJCDLP, as well as assistant chief of operations for Louisiana United International, Incorporated, which is LUI. The most controversial of these efforts seek appropriate but dramatic expansion of U.S. state and federal judicial accountability. Crenshaw-Logal is lead strategist for Opt-in USA, a grassroots campaign spearheaded by both NJCDLP and LUI that addresses America's inadequate judicial oversight as a constitutional and human rights crisis with unrivaled success. Distinguished on multiple occasions as a scholar, Crenshaw-Logal is also a prolific and published writer on topics such as grassroots advocacy, First Amendment rights, and the dynamics of organized U.S. legal system abuse. She is chairperson of the Human Rights Committee for the Council of Organizations, an affiliate of the United Nations Association of the USA. Now, Ms. Belinda Parker Brown, my other guest, she's wonderful. She's an educator, researcher, life specialist, community organizer, and motivational speaker who has spent the majority of her career enhancing the potential of others. Diverse audiences have benefited greatly and responded enthusiastically to Parker Brown's wealth of experiences. She is a co-founder and chief executive officer of Louisiana United International, Incorporated, LUI, as well as a board member of and community outreach director for National Judicial Conduct and Disability Law Project, Incorporated, which is NJCDLP. Working under the banner of Opt-in USA, both NJCDLP and LUI address organized U.S. legal system abuse facilitated by unchecked judicial misconduct. NJCDLP does so primarily as a think tank and public policy analyst. LUI does so primarily as a bipartisan social justice organization. Its mission is to champion human rights, including the civil, constitutional, and societal rights that are all too commonly trampled in today's world. LUI speaks for the person who or group that cannot speak for himself, herself, or itself. And LUI speaks through Belinda Parker Brown. In her are glimmers of Fannie Lou Hamer, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Professor Angela Y. Davis, which amazing combination is Parker Brown's uniqueness and strength. And I welcome you both to Slam the Gavel. And we're going to talk about Opt-in USA, which is the grassroots campaign that addresses organized U.S. legal system abuse as a human rights crisis attributed to inadequate judicial oversight in America. So my question to you is, what is organized U.S. legal system abuse? And what happens?
Well, I'll dive in there first of all, but let me say thank you so much, Marianne. It's such an honor to be here on Slam the Gavel. How appropriate for this to be our first broadcast since Opt-in USA launched its latest initiative challenging organized U.S. legal system abuse as a human rights crisis. So let's just try to get clear. I'm like the straight man in our joint challenge of this legal system corruption. And we tackle these topics, as your introduction indicated, from a more public policy, constitutional rights, international human rights law perspective. So I'll be the straight man and get our definitions clear, and then Miss Belinda will, as the speaking as the voice of the American people, will elaborate from there, and a lot of times translate these rather legalistic concepts. But organized U.S. legal system abuse means is what is happening in our courts is no accident, is deliberate, is orchestrated, is by agreement. And everybody shuns this word. But when you have an agreement between the presiding judge and your courtroom opponent, and the agreement is to make sure that you do not have a fair and impartial court experience. That's really a conspiracy to deny you of the First Amendment right to a fair and impartial adjudication. That is a constitutional right. Another way of describing this organized U.S. legal system abuse, and again, it's about deliberate violations of rights, because you can have your rights violated, and it could be because the judge made a mistake. It does not have to be intentional. So we're talking about when it's intentional. They know what they're doing. They know there's a deliberate disregard of your clearly established rights. And one way that's described, and we hear it often among courtroom or legal system advocates in this country, good government advocates, is called racketeering. It's racketeering of the U.S. courts. When you take these courts and you repurpose it, you start serving some other kind of end, and the end may be anything. The end may be, transferring power from one business to another business, or making sure some outspoken citizen activist is silent. Their controversial message is not heard. But racketeering is basically you're taking what's to be a legitimate operation and you're serving an illegitimate end. And then the last description that is another way of describing organized U.S. legal system abuse is the weaponization of America's legal system. And that phrase is becoming much more commonly known in the United States, but that's really a concept that's very popular among international human rights advocates. But all of that goes to what constitutes organized U.S. legal system abuse.
Absolutely.
Now, I'll just elaborate just a little bit more, Ms. Belinda, and sorry for interrupting you. The real problem, the reason why this has gotten to a point of an international concern is when over the last literally 2 to 3 decades, when American citizen or U.S. resident had a complaint that says that their rights were deliberately violated, it was the judge somehow ganged up with their court adversary, and they deliberately denied them a fair and impartial resolution of the legal dispute. We have gone for year after year, decade after decade, and you've had people challenge that through lawsuits, and we've gone as far as the U.S. Supreme Court. We go to our legislators, we go to the FBI, we go to the local police, we go to our governors, and we have not been able to get relief. And one of the fundamental obligations of government is to provide its citizens what's called effective avenues of redress. And after decades of people tackling this problem of weaponization of the legal system, conspiracies to deny fair and impartial court proceedings, we finally threw up our hand and said, it is not us. We are not the problem. It is not that you're doing it wrong, or Miss Belinda is doing it wrong, or our organization, our LUI. It is the fact that our country has not put in place systems. These things are not working.
Mm-hmm.
It's on paper we have these options, but it's just a shell game. And in
Mhm.
1 year, that's what we described it at Opt-in USA. It's just a shell game. And you go year after year. A lot of people don't even live long enough to get any type of meaningful relief. And Miss Belinda has been on the front lines of that battle, so she can speak to it personally.
Yeah, Marianne, I didn't know if you was going to bring me in or not, but if you want, I just would like to say, you know, thank you so very, very much for giving us this opportunity to be here with you on Slam the Gavel. I mean, what a prophetic and a profound way to bring about this type of introduction on what our on what the Biden administration outreach means for the people. I just want to say how much we appreciate you for giving us this opportunity.
And I appreciate you both for coming on and informing everyone of this.
Absolutely. Well, and informing is a real good word, because that's what we're here to do. I have a radio show. It's called the most informative music and talk show here in the state of Louisiana. And that's what we want to do. We want to inform the people. But right now, I want to emphasize on what Dr. Zena just spoke in the legalistic way. But I want to break it down so that the people can really understand how serious this is and what it's really all about. When we say that this has been going on for decades, we have all the proof of vetted cases that we have been in and through the court system, and we have, derived to the fact of the matter that it's not the people, it's the system. And to emphasize on that, we have so many people, so many of us, because I've been a victim of this type of abuse too as well. So many of us that have had our rights deliberately
Mm-hmm.
violated.
Mm-hmm.
When you got the sheriff, okay, first the police officer, the sheriff, the coroner, the lawyer, the prosecutor, the public defender, the judge, all of them in cahoots to concoct, fabricate, okay? Listen, people, I'm telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and manufacture a case against you, okay? We got people that have been railroaded through this system where the judge is sleeping with the lawyer. Okay, listen. The lawyer that you done paid anywhere between 20 to 25, maybe even $40,000. I had one case in a family court case where a lady spent over $1 million paying her lawyer when the judge was sleeping with the lawyer on top of her desk in the chambers. This is real. I'm not making this up.
Oh, you can't make it up. I believe it. I've heard of stories like this, definitely.
So this is when we're saying that, how can you win a case like that? How can you win a case where your lawyer and his law firm endorsed one of his lawyers in his law firm to run for judge, and he take the seat, and then all of a sudden, all of your cases wind up in his courtroom?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear what I'm saying? I'm talking about your partner that was working with you in your law firm become the judge that you endorsed. You paid his campaign race, and now he's the judge, and all of your family court cases wind up in his courtroom.
How convenient. Yes.
So what if you was the defendant and that was your lawyer, and you want to get your kids back, and you fighting to get your kids back? So your lawyer is friends or partners with the judge. You gonna get your kids back. But what if you was the opposite on what if you was the one that was right and you didn't pay your lawyer to go up against this lawyer? You gonna lose. You gonna automatically lose, because we call it when the fix is in, the fix is in, and it ain't no way you gonna win. Thank you, Mary Ann.
Oh, most definitely. I know I was talking to someone and she was saying how absolute immunity must be repealed for state and federal judges. And these public servants must be held accountable for defrauding victims of legal system abuse.
You know, Marian, I'm glad you brought that up. And I know that people latch on to that phrase, absolute immunity, and they have a right to have their views on that. But I wonder, do people really understand what it means to what would happen if they would eliminate absolute immunity? Absolute immunity just makes the judge where you cannot sue the judge with a civil lawsuit for violating your rights. Absolute immunity is not supposed to mean that the judge can't be criminally prosecuted. Absolute immunity is not supposed to mean that the judge cannot be disciplined or impeached. It just simply means that you can't sue that judge, get a judgment, and collect, from their paycheck, which with these type of horrendous violations of rights, even if the judge is making $200,000 a year, the people are just, they really get wrapped up in the idea of being able to every month get a certain amount of this judge's paycheck. And I want to suggest that's the least, that should be the least of our concerns. And another thing that we don't consider is, okay, let's say we can sue the judge. Well, guess what? You're just going to go back to some more judges who are this judge's colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
and try to prove your case in front of that type of audience. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's real romantic and kind of sexy to say, oh, let's eliminate absolute judicial immunity. And believe me, it was created improperly. That's something that the judges created for themselves. That should have never happened. If you are going to have absolute immunity, that should have been something created by the legislature. There's a million things wrong with, the concept of absolute judicial immunity. But at the end of the day, it is not the end all, the be all, insofar as why we can't get justice in these courts. It's just really one of the most smallest considerations. And I know that's not a popular view, but that's the truth. And I've written law review articles about that. And I've also been on the other side. I've worked as a temporary judge, and that you hear the defense, well, you can't sue a judge even if they have been blatantly, done something blatantly unethical.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of the matter is, if the judges had to constantly deal with lawsuits, it would be disruptive.
Thank you,
Ms.
Dr.
Belinda?
Z. I gotta say this.
Mm-hmm.
Opt-in USA is what we're doing, is pressing the Biden administration to create a FEMA for the courts to hear our complaints. When we say that, we don't have any type of recourse, redress to come before the courts and explain to the courts that our judge, is sleeping with our lawyer. How can we get into the courts with that? How can we get into the courts when the judge is presiding over a case that her husband, listen to me, I'm fit to break this down. I'm gonna tell you that her husband is the #1 competitor in the case. And so when we're saying that we're pressing the Biden administration, to create a FEMA so that we can be able to get these type of complaints into the, now is the time for us to be able to prove that these things are actually happening. We have the proof. We have tons and tons of verifiable factual information that will authenticate everything that we're saying that's happening. You know, when I tell, you know, when I just told that the lawyer, his partner is the judge. When his clients come, everybody like, go to him because, you know, he's gonna win. Oh, but he's too high. How much do he charge? Oh, he only gonna charge you $100,000, but it's guaranteed for you to win, because everybody know his partner is the judge that he's gonna go in front of. So yeah, you're gonna sell everything you got to pay him $100,000 so that you can win your case, even though you don't deserve to win. These are the type of things that's happening.
Exactly, and if I can elaborate, you know, it's a retired professor out of David Barnhauser, out of Ohio, and he said we need to stop looking at these courts as conflict, where you go to resolve conflict, and we need to start looking at these courts as power distribution centers. So I want to elaborate on this notion of these, you know, the individual influence of a local attorney over a local judge. When you talk about a power distribution center, then you're talking about a court system that is somehow managing to incarcerate an inordinate amount of Black people, an inordinate amount of brown people, an inordinate amount of indigenous people, an inordinate amount of poor people. Power distribution, you know, and they're feeding a prison industry. So it's about where the resources are going and who's suffering the cost and who's making the money. Another thing, when employment law, when you have courts that are making decisions that favor employers and favor big corporations and favor government as opposed to the employee. So in addition to the type of scenario that Ms. Belinda is describing, there's also these big picture scenarios, and the go-to place to make all of this happen is our legal system, a power distribution center. It's like social engineering.
Wow. And to me, that is sickening. It's a disgrace. And the whole world needs to know that the United States of America court system have failed all of us. And this is why we have to have, you know, and you know, Marianne, I want to say, I don't know how much time we have, but you know, I'm hoping that we get into the in this discussion an opportunity to talk about what we all must be doing, what we all need to be doing, and what
definitely.
we all have to do.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you.
Oh,
if
we
I
will.
If I can elaborate, oh, I'm sorry, Marianne, I cut you off. Go ahead.
That's okay. No, I was going to say, yeah, we need to discuss what the public can do to get this fixed. And, you know, some people say, well, you know, how about abolish absolute immunity? Should the politicians or Congress create a legal system accountability act? Is that something that you think would be doable?
What needs to happen is, again, the United States is a party to what's called a covenant, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Now, our country has this obligation under the Constitution, but under this International Human Rights Treaty, it specifically pledges that it will provide its citizens effective avenues of redress. And that means you need to create, however you do it, a way that when people have these allegations that the system is, the judges and the lawyers and the prosecutors and the law enforcement are the fix is in, you have to have a system in place that people can get a fair and impartial resolution of the claim. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to win, but the proceeding has to be fair and impartial. So what the UN Human Rights Council made a determination at the request of Opt-in USA in 2018. They made a determination that the United States, if you are alleging this fix, this kind of fix that Ms. Belinda has described, and this distribution, this social engineering that I elaborated on. The UN Human Rights Council made a determination in October 2018 that the United States does not provide an effective avenue of redress. Yes, you got rights on paper, but it's just a shell game. Now, let me define what we have to have, and then I'm going to bring it to this FEMA, and then I'll let Ms. Belinda come in and elaborate. To have an effective avenue of redress, it must be prompt. No more this 10, 20, 30, 2, 3, 4, 5 years trying to, you still fight. Grandma dead. No more of that. It must be prompt. It must be accessible, meaning it needs to be affordable. You know, people can't even afford lawyers these days. And the lawyers are afraid to take the controversial cases. All of that has to be fixed. There are some advocates that have proposed that lawyers need to end the monopoly on the practice of law. Okay, so it needs to be prompt, accessible. It needs to be available before an independent body. They didn't say a court. And it needs to lead to reparations, because when you've been harmed and for decades the legal system has not given you an avenue of relief, you at that point you're beyond settlements and you know, and resolving a case. You're talking about reparations. You got to have the statute of limitations suspended, and you've got to just go in and be able to establish how you were harmed and get relief. Now, and where applicable, this system has to put in place what's necessary, that the people who caused you harm are held accountable, and that what their wrongdoing, there's a way to stop it. Okay, now hopefully you all got that. That's why Ms. Belinda is talking about a FEMA, a federal emergency management agency. We know that term when there's a natural disaster. Ms. Belinda is from Louisiana. They know about FEMA when Hurricane Katrina came in and wiped out the community. Well, the judicial system is a natural disaster. When it comes, our legal system is a disaster. It's not natural. When it comes to protecting us from these organized abuses of our rights involving unethical lawyers and unethical judges. So our country needs to get down to the drawing board and come together and decide everything that's needed. You identified a few proposed solutions, Marianne. Congress needs to spend at least a year or two hearing from the advocates that you're referencing. And we need to talk. The people who know what's wrong with the system need to be able to make presentations to Congress and say, this is why it's not working. This is what needs to change. And then there needs to be an official determination as to how, put in place an effective avenue of relief, so we don't have to keep reliving these nightmares. But while all that is going, the people who have been harmed need some way to bring forth the evidence of what has happened to them and get relief. So we're not going to be sitting around waiting for Congress that, they have these investigative hearings that take years and years. In the meantime, we're going to be going before these bodies, these administrative bodies, and proving our case and getting relief. So that's what Ms. Belinda is talking about.
And the reason why, Marianne, that this is so urgent right now, and it's a life or death situation. And I want to share briefly, one family, mother had done everything right to get her kids back. She done everything right. She spent thousands of dollars, if not, tens of thousands of dollars, what she can afford of her life savings and all of her personal properties and everything, fighting to get her kids back after she had done everything right and still lost her kids. But I want to tell this story, and I hope that this would raise raise the level of the seriousness of this matter. One of my members had joined up with our organization. He had an accident with a semi truck, and he was injured real bad. And it was, proven that he was due to receive a settlement. But his lawyer did not disclose to him that he was, I guess, representing the insurance company that he was going to sue, that was going to settle his settlement. So he went into a meeting with them, and he kind of suspected that, there was something wrong with, and so his lawyer was basically telling him, get it over here, get it over there, go and settle for, I think it was like $30,000. But this man had a serious shoulder blade, injury, surgery, constant pain, just physical, where he just didn't feel that, $30,000, $40,000 or whatever it was, just peanuts that they were offering him. So he went in and he said, I told him, I said, when you go in, John, make sure that, you go in and you put your phone on record. And he recorded the whole conversation. So John come back and he say to them, he said, it seems as though to me that y'all on their side and not my side, So what happens is that this go on and on, because you really can't find out what's going on. This man committed suicide. He killed himself because, first of all, he was losing everything he had, because his family and everything, was going down, and he had some financial issues that he really needed to attend. His settlement would resolve the problem. But this was going back and forth to the tune at least about 4 or 5 years. But he shot himself, killed himself. And I'm devastated by it, because he was a wonderful man, wife of two twin boys. One of them, it's sad for me to have to, it hurts for me to have to tell that sad story. But what I'm saying is, because it was no way he was going to win a decent settlement, because his lawyer refused to. But we found out that, this is what happened. So what can we do?
And I wonder if people understand what it is that Opt-in USA is trying to do, because there seems to be a pull back from our efforts, and people are proposing things like, well, let's get rid of immunity, or let's try to some of the suggestions that you had mentioned, Marianne. But with with this ICCPR, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it obliges our country to sit down and examine all of the proposed solutions. There is no band-aid that's going to solve all of these problems. There's a multitude. We got to make legal representation more affordable, more accessible. We've got to have a situation where, the discipline of lawyers and judges is effective. And even when you are, the rare occasion that you can get a judge discipline, it's just some private letter of reprimand. We got to fix all of that. And this treaty obliges the United States to start the process of hearing from all the stakeholders and starting the discussion as to what will actually turn this situation around, what will actually fix this. And another thing I want to mention, when you talk about what is it that we can do, I want to talk with you all, and you all need to help me understand that there are people out there saying, oh, they never going to do this. So, they're not standing up in support of our this outreach that Ms. Belinda talked about. We sent a correspondence to President Biden on June 15th, and we set out for him where the United States is at this point, because at this point the United Nations have said what you have in place is a violation of your treaty. They are not effective avenues of redress. And the Trump administration also said earlier this year that the United States is not properly dealing with its legal system corruption. But the Trump administration, what we made clear to the Biden administration, is that the Trump administration thought they had a way out. they said, yeah, this is a crisis, but we got other crises that we're dealing with. And they thought that argument was going to, to get out of jail free pass, not realizing that our country cannot take the position that there are segments of our population who are being persecuted, psychologically tortured, sometimes to the point of suicide by our judges,
Mm-hmm.
and then turn around and say, but we got better things to do. So in other words, there are certain people in our country that, okay, if you're not complaining about your judge, you can have an effective avenue of redress. But if you are complaining about the court system and stuff, well, we got other more pressing things to do. There is such a thing called privileges and immunities. We're all American citizens, and you cannot divvy up effective avenues. What is it? Kennedy said, for every harm, there should be relief.
Mm-hmm.
You can't give that to some of us and deny it to others of us on the grounds that you got too much to do. But what I want to get to, and then I'll be quiet. There are some people who just think, well, they're not gonna do it. They not gonna do it. So why even try? And it just amazes me that anyone thinks. Again, the fundamental obligation of any country is to protect its citizens from enemies, foreign or domestic. That's a fundamental obligation. So, you see in these third world countries where the president is sending in the military and they're killing people and burning down villages. That's why it's taken so seriously, because the government shouldn't harm its people. But I don't know why the American people can think that the United States of America can basically the people in our trucks are our judges. And in a metaphorical sense, they're going into our villages and they're burning down homes and families and careers and of hardworking, decent Americans. And the United States is saying, well, we got better things to do. I'm not sure what makes us think that that is something that they can get away with.
Well, absolutely. And I feel very strongly, Dr. Zena and Marianne, that, it is getting to the point now that we're in a fiery furnace with this. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I just had to talk a parent down a couple weeks ago from going and shooting up the courthouse. When I see these type of, and I also had to grab a parent from attacking another attorney from the opposite side in the courtroom, because of the information that they find out later. And so when I'm dealing with situations like this, I'm not the expert, but it really breaks my heart that I got to talk somebody down from taking their life and taking other people's lives because of the system being because of them being weaponized by the system.
Yes,
and that was because of the Child Protective Services was in cahoots with a family that wanted these kids, even though the mother had done everything right to get her kids back, but they was determined that the fix was in. So she was like, before I let them take my kids, I'll take their life.
And this is what it drives it to.
Yes, but people are under the mistaken impression that this outreach to the Biden administration, Opt-in USA, us talking about this human rights treaty, the ICCPR, that this is some type of popularity contest, and so we need to fill the streets. And this is not a popularity contest. That's the mistake that the Trump administration made, that saying, well, we got more pressing things to do, because they try to suggest that it's not clear that yes, so some people are having these problems, but this is a country of 30 million people and most people are not having this problem. Okay, so one of the things that we make clear is, I don't care if it's two of us that have these problems, no American could be denied a fair and effective avenue of redress. You've got to have a fair and impartial resolution of your claims. I don't care if it's just me and you. You can't say that we can't have it if I'm an American citizen. So it's not about us getting a bunch of numbers and that's the way we're going to win. Sort of like the Black Lives Matter, or what happened after the death of George Floyd, where people around the country around the world flooded the street. It's not about us taking a position that that's what's necessary to win, because we've proven that when you're dealing with this court corruption, it becomes virtually impossible to build that type of momentum. And Ms. Belinda can talk to you about that, because her organization has done phenomenal things. I mean, have gotten powerful prosecutors sent to prison, powerful sheriffs sent to prison. So she can talk about what can and can be done insofar as pulling together community outcry. But what we have to show, when we say click like, share your story, sign a petition, it's so that it's like our own form of a Me Too movement. Let them know that you're out there and you believe that you should have relief. You believe that your country should have time to protect you. And that is the point of it, as opposed to a popularity contest.
Absolutely. Wow. We must pull, all of our evidence together. It's just time for us to, pull it all together, and that we can, be able to prove these unlawful conspiracies and weaponization of the legal system that is against us. So it's just time that, we can't keep on talking about it, because everybody know about it. Everybody's been talking about it. Everybody can say, oh, that happened to me. But this is a campaign, outreach to the Biden administration that can bring about the change necessary that the world needs to see. Yeah. So, Marianne, I will appreciate you so very much. I want to talk about, the fact that, Dr. Z, we have done some extensive, research and time well spent on this type of outreach to the Biden administration. I don't care, I'm just going to say this from my own opinion, and I appreciate the people that agree with me. We can keep on trying everything. And that's what a lot of us have been doing. We keep going back for help, when we got the fox guarding the hen house. We done wrote bar complaints. We done wrote judicial complaints. When you write a judicial complaint to, and then the person that's going to read it is playing golf with the judge and friends with the judge. And even though the complaint is very accurate, nothing is going to happen. They're going to ball it up and throw it in the garbage. And these are the type of things that we have seen when we file all kinds of documents, and the court is, paying all of these fees and administration and attorney costs and everything involved with that. We still lose and still have not gotten the proper, attention to those documents, because, it's just like they're going to rubber stamp it, denied, bam, So we need help with Opt-in USA to keep the pressure on the Biden administration to act promptly. We can't wait for this. When I tell you that families are being destroyed, people are suffering and dying, especially when it comes to our children, elderly, disabled people, it's wrong for anybody to sit back and tell us that they don't have money, or they don't have time, or they got a bigger fish to fry. I had my district attorney tell me that he don't have the money to go back and verify the cases that we have already vet, but they rather wait and let people spend $25,000 30, 40 years in prison and then find out that they never should have been there in the first place.
Exactly.
And we see that happening.
Can I interject, Ms. Belinda? Because when you said the
Yeah,
world
because
needs
I'm
to,
getting choked up with this right here. It makes me want to cry.
and that's what I want to emphasize. When you said the world needs to see, that's another thing and why we need people to step forth and you know, show, you know, we got the page called The Wave, and we're centralizing our stories on that page of our website. Why is that important? See, I work with international human rights lawyers and activists around the world, and what they have told me, and I've shared a million times with our community, people around the world are convinced that, you know, the United States is the beacon in the West. They don't think that the United States is perfect, but it's the gold standard. And our legal system is the gold standard. We were just able to establish that they tinkered with it so much that they can make it work when they want it to work, and it don't work when the fix is in. But people around the world are convinced that we don't have it that bad. You know, that when we complain about our rights being violated, that means that now instead of being in a 5,000 square foot home, I got to get a 1-bedroom apartment. And instead of, you know, having 3 or 4 cars, I'm taking the bus. That's what they think suffering is to American citizens. And if we want to have the world outcry and joining us and putting pressure on the Biden administration to give us relief, give us justice, we were owed it all along, it's past due time. We've got to tell them these stories because they don't know. Not across the world. People think everybody knows what's going on, but you'd be surprised how many people don't really know. And then the last point, this is kind of a technical point, then I'm going to be quiet for the rest of the program, is that another problem that Opt-in USA is addressing is not only the United States tell us that they don't have time and they don't have money to address our claims. Do you all realize that the United States will not authorize American citizens to go directly to the United Nations with their case and seek relief through the United Nations? Now, China, I use this example, in China and other, you know, historically authoritarian countries, a Chinese political prisoner can go to the United Nations and say, they tortured me, and get an order from the United Nations to the government of China to release this person and give them relief. But American citizens, we do not have the right to do that because Congress has said, okay, we're going to sign this treaty, but we're not going to let any American citizens enforce it. And you can't enforce it in any U.S. court, and you can't enforce it in any before the United Nations. So that's very problematic because that's why they play this game, these number games. Well, it's not enough of you all. Well, we could go with our individual cases. If they don't think it's enough of us to be worth their time, they could empower us to go with our individual case, and they won't even do that. Now, what else do I have to tell you? That they intend on just letting us be persecuted and destroyed and corrupt in these corrupt courts.
Why they commit treason.
What else is it? This is a republic, is a government of the people, for the people, supposedly, and that's not happening. And our government officials are letting it happen from one administration to another. That is seditious. That is treasonous. And yet and still, I hear so many people saying, well, don't even bother, that ain't gonna work. They're not gonna do it. Well, if they're going to ignore this, and if this is the American nightmare and it's not an American dream, I think we ought to at least get that established.
Absolutely, because the United States Constitution and the international law do not guarantee us court. Listen, people, victories. We you know, here in the United States of America, it's a disgrace. I'm a victim of it. And we have thousands of other people that are victims of it. And you see it all in the news where you got to spend 20, 25 years in prison for a crime you didn't commit because the fix was in. So, you know, the judge did not want to side, you know, on, you know, or the courts did not, you know, bring it because it was all, I'm telling you, it was all rigged up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's time, people, for us to really keep the pressure on the Biden administration. You know, the law does not require juries and judges and mediators to agree with us. They just have to be competent, which include being fair and impartial.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anytime you got judges setting up there violating the canon that don't mean nothing, and they know they violating the canon, and now they blaming everything on the COVID-19, they not even giving us access to the court. You know, Opt-in USA will also press Congress to hear our views on what it is about. The United States legal system that needs to change so that our human rights are better protected from this type of corruption. It's corrupt, people. It is corrupt. And I'm telling you, it's at the peak of an explosion because people are not going to stand by and tolerate it being treated like this. You know, I had a judge that committed suicide because he took a bribe from a corporation and it was found out. So before he faced his day in court, he went home and went into his garage, turned on his car, and his wife found him dead, frozen there in there the next morning from carbon dioxide. Now that's what a judge did to himself because he was forced to take a bribe from a corrupt corporation, and he took it and he died. Now that's what happened in my case.
Do you suggest that these parents write in their stories to the Biden administration?
It's very important that we seem part of a collective effort. So they need to make it clear that they're associated with Opt-in USA. So they can make direct outreach, but just make sure they find a way to connect with us. Let us put it on our site because the research indicates that when you advocate as part of when your advocates are subject matter experts, it's more effective. So if you connect your individual story with the public policy and the what we've been able to establish before the United Nations and our research, then that strengthens your chances of prevailing. So we just have to be connected. So if I can share with you, you know, these websites, because Opt-in USA has its own website, but I'm gonna give you the call letters for the NJCDLP, and it's www.njcdlp.org. So www.njcdlp.org, and when you go on there, you'll see our page, what is called Wave, and that's where we're putting all the stories of what has happened to individuals. And then we work very closely. The Law Project is what we call it for short. NJCDLP is not a community organizer. It's a think tank, it's a public policy analyst, but we have to be able to speak for the people, protect their interests, and we work with Louisiana United International. That's their role. They are the voice of the people. They will challenge what we say. if they think that any of our advocacy is inconsistent with the rights of average Americans. So I'm the assistant chief of operations, and so I can give you their website, www. I've said this a million times, launitedi.org. There's LA, which stands for Louisiana, United, I, which stands for international, launitedi.org, Louisiana United International. And we are at the forefront of this international human rights advocacy, but we need people to stop resisting us and start joining in our efforts and let us, our voices be heard. This is our Me Too movement, and we need to show the world what's happening.
Absolutely. And Marianne, and I know, you know, slam the gavel, and that's what we're doing right now here with you tonight on this show. It is so important that people understand that, you know, it's united we shall stand, and divided we will fall. So what we're saying is that the power is in unity now, is for all of us to come together and put this type of pressure on the Biden administration that have these type of stories or atrocities that have transpired, you know, in this corrupt system. So, and we feel that this would make it more expeditiously. It would also bring about, a greater attention from their perspective to be more prompt and bringing forth the FEMA that can bring about the release. You know, when I think about Katrina, you know, how they let people die, you know, waiting on water, you know, how they let people die when they was trying to figure out who were going to send the buses, you know, who were going to pay for the buses to get there, who were going to drive the buses. And then, you know, while they had cars and stuff that were flooding, that people could have just easily had access to get to higher ground, you know, and people died waiting on that. We don't want to wait for this. We need immediate attention. This is a pandemic, I would say, in our court system. You know, it is a disaster, okay? And people's lives are being devastated because of it.
Do you suggest that people still report judges and attorneys, and maybe take that report that they have reported that judge and sent it to the www.njcdlp.org as well?
That would be fine. We'll centralize it all.
Because I tell parents to, you know, write up their stories and, you know, write up complaints, complain about these attorneys. Of course, they don't do anything because nothing's unethical enough, is what you get back in the mail.
Absolutely.
So then I will start telling parents to still complain about the judge and the attorney and send it to you all.
Absolutely.
We're going to be starting some training to help people also to more effectively harness our collective power, because that's one thing. We're doing things in isolation, and you heard Miss Belinda talk about the need for unity. We're one of our training courses where is called "It Takes a Village," and people need to get a movement mentality. So it's because if I have a legal difficulty, I need people to rally around my case, but I got to be willing to do it with other people who have similar difficulties. So
absolutely.
As soon as we get this going with Opt-in USA, we'll start moving more towards looking at individual cases.
Absolutely. And Marianne, we appreciate your advocacy so much, because what you're doing is basically just trying to get people, you know, to do something. And that's so important. It's when people are sitting back and they don't know what to do, where to turn, who to talk to, or if it's going to make any difference. So your advocacy is very important to us, and we appreciate that. But now we're coming here as lifters, you know, to help lift you up in the work that you're doing, to bring it more to a to a more united effort and to bring about this change that is so necessary for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Now, if someone asks, okay, I'm making complaints, I'm sending it to your website, and should they also send it to the Biden administration with opt-in USA titled with it?
That's fine if that's what they want to do. No, we're not going to discourage people from doing anything they think was in their best interest, but we will say you do need to connect yourself with this broader effort.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right, my grandmother always told me that numbers are powerful. Numbers are powerful, especially when you want to bring about a movement. So that's all we're trying to do right now, is show the Biden administration that the pressure is not coming just from us. And one of the most important things too is that, it's something where even when I went to the FBI, they said, well, we don't take isolated cases. Then I went to the Department of Justice. Well, it has to be more of a systemic problem. Is this just happening to you? Where that could have just been a mistake, where, it have to be more systemic. So, I don't want to give people the runaround. We're in a crisis right now. And if we consider this as a crisis and a disaster that we're facing right now, then we need to come together. And, we just got to get the chip off our shoulder about who gonna get the credit and why they doing this and I can do it better and all that kind of stuff. Stop that, because that's helping us lose. And we're winning right now. We're winning. So I'm really, urging everybody to make sure that, they connect with us on some level or some form or another. Thank you.
If you want to be contacted, can someone contact you personally, or you would rather have them go through the NJCDLP org?
That's best for me. We have a relatively small staff. And so in order to be able for a relatively small staff to meaningfully help a large number of people, the one-on-one outreach becomes challenging. So if we have online all the mechanisms that you need to submit your information, and we have it where we can receive that information in an orderly process. But if we're getting it from 17 different directions, it becomes more difficult. So if people would, if they would follow, what we have set up online, the administrative process, that would help us help them.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
excellent.
And Dr. Z, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had this discussion that we really want other advocates out there like Marianne and different ones. There's a whole lot of people out there that's doing this type of work. We want them to feel now, as they listen to this show, that there is hope. There is hope now. So please reach out to us. Reach out to us and know that, this is a safe ground, and that we all can unite and come together to make sure that we get this change that's necessary. Now, not later. We want justice now.
Exactly.
Yes, because they are the subject matter experts. That's why I said, the Louisiana United deals with a lot of different areas, but the NJCDLP, we are not fathers' rights experts. We're not mothers' rights experts. We're not children's rights experts. We're not experts on the U.S. Family Court. Yes, we understand basic due process and equal protection. We definitely understand some of the dynamics in those areas, and it's, because it's judicial misconduct and lawyer misconduct is kind of, it sweeps broadly. But the subject matter experts are the ones that we want to get in front of Congress. And we've paved that way. We've gotten these historic determinations by the United Nations and a big concession by the Trump administration. And we're not opening that up. So we can tell, we can be about the experts on everything to do with the legal system. We're not. But we need to be able to identify to them those advocates out there who do know what the problems are. But we can't know that if they're not working with us and letting us know what they want to present.
Mm-hmm. I'm very glad to have you both on. And I was wondering if you'd like to be return guests in the future and update us all on progress.
Certainly, certainly.
You know, and
Absolutely. I know we're coming to a close, but before we close, I would just like to say one more thing.
mm-hmm.
You know, that we all should be doing this together. You know, I feel the emphasis on making sure that people get that clear in their mind, and that, you know, every head needs a body.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like right now that we're taking the lead, but we cannot do it without the body.
Mm-hmm.
So I want everyone right now just to come together and really take a real serious, you know, evaluation of what you've been doing, and in this type of advocacy. It's time for us to do it now together. So I just want to say that it's just time for us to come together and get it done. Thank you.
Yes, and
Get it done in 2021. Let's get it done.
Excellent. And I encourage parents, even though I know they're tired from court, I know they've been beaten up by court,
Yeah.
but find the time to even write down on a piece of paper what happened and submit it to the www.njcdlp.org. And there's strength in numbers. And if we all stick together, we can get this fixed. So I thank you both, Dr. Zena and Belinda, for coming on, and we'll do it again.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marianne.
Okay, thank you. Don't jump off yet. Slam the Gavel is
Okay.
a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation and corruption. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again with Dr. Zena and Belinda and other guests for another exciting episode. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone.